Alright guys, this is probably the worst survival knife that you can buy for winter operations. Now, admittedly, people in the comments section will say and light me up that the Gerber LMF-2 was never designed for winter operations, but while this is technically true, this knife does check a lot of the winter survival boxes, such as having rubberized handle, having a decently thick blade, it being a reasonably tough knife, and in this video I want to break down the major fail points on this knife and why it is not a good option for winter survival or outdoor survival as a whole. So first we move into batoning. Batoning is one of the most crucial things for shelter building and fire starting, and this is the biggest crux of this knife. While it is an overall large knife, it has a lot of handle length. It does not have a lot of blade length, so what you end up seeing here is the fact that this knife can't really span a lot of wood to do a lot of expeditious batoning. And so while it is tough enough to baton, it just really can't span. In addition to this too, the handle has a plastic shell underneath the rubberization that is very easy to break with a misstrike, and so this is another potential fail point for this knife. Alright, next up is feathersticking. Now, this is one thing that this knife does actually excel at fairly well to an extent. Now, to be fair, this is a flat ground knife, and as we know with most flat ground knives in survival, we know that these types of knives tend to be very easy to essentially sit on a flat plane and crank out really good feather sticks. Now, like I said, it is good to an extent. The flat grind here does help it, but at the same time too, over half, I would say essentially 60% of this blade is serrated, and that part of the blade actually works against you. This is once again another reason why this knife is not the best for winter survival. Next up, we can see some of the damage overall on this knife, as I mentioned earlier with the whole plastic underneath the rubber breaking, and then the next part to this is notching. Once again, that flat grind really does aid in this knife's ability to notch well, and so once again, this is a good or favorable characteristic. However, don't be deceived, this doesn't necessarily make this knife great because you're still battling that leverage war between having to use a part of the blade that is not serrated further away from the actual handle. Alright, the last 2 points that I really have here to kind of just show, once again, its overall survival incompetency and inability, including in winter settings, is the fact that this ferro rod, or this knife, really doesn't strike ferro rods very well. The spine is not sharpened in any way, shape, or form, and so therefore it doesn't really catch a ferro rod, and you can see one spark here, but struck it a bunch of times and there really wasn't any sparks coming off. Lastly, too, I thought it was also important to note and show, once again, survival in the winter specifically, but also in other environments. This sheath that the knife is supposedly supposed to sit in has a lot of ingress points. So you can see that just by dropping the sheath in the snow, even on accident, can lead to a lot of water getting in, or a lot of snow, sorry, that could turn to water, but a lot of snow ingress into the sheath, actually preventing the knife from properly seating. So you have to clean it out if this happens at all.